All right, so continuing with our executive flashcards, Federalist 70, we read this document in class, and I would strongly encourage you to go back to the worksheet that had a series of questions about what Alexander Hamilton was saying in this particular document. But broadly speaking, Hamilton was somebody who advocated for a very strong executive. He, in some cases, was actually accused of being a monarchist and saying that the British model was one that should be emulated in the United States. But there were debates at the Constitutional Convention about what should the executive branch look like. There was no executive in the Articles of Confederation. Some people thought that the executive should be limited in scope, and others thought perhaps that it should have maybe an executive council, and a council would have multiple members on it. Hamilton argues that having a single executive, a unitary executive, one person, is going to allow it to exercise significant authority quickly and decisively. In this Constitution, there are a lot of checks and balances, but the executive needs to have the ability to act decisively and to make decisions that can be in the interest of national security, in the interest of maintaining the safety of the nation, and not getting things bogged down in slow, laborious processes when quick decisions need to be made. So he's very much a proponent of a strong executive, and this was something people were concerned about. But he did make his position pretty clear in Federalist 70. I would point out, some people thought that executives should have a lifelong term, for example, and maybe Hamilton would have been more inclined to support that. But the Federalist Papers are defending the Constitution as it emerged from the Constitutional Convention. So, although he argues for a strong executive, he may have even wanted a stronger one than he's actually talking about in Federalist 70. Of course, the Constitution has been changed over time, and the 22nd Amendment is an example of one of those changes. It basically says you have to have a two-term maximum or 10 years if you carried out the remainder of a term you inherited. Then you can run an additional 2 terms. But basically, this is the 2-term limit. And that is added to the Constitution after Franklin Roosevelt was elected 4 times to the executive. This idea that having an executive that could be this long-lasting could potentially be problematic, and people wanted to put in the Constitution the tradition that Washington had started of stepping down after 2 terms. Flashcard number 11 and 12 are very kind of abstract ones or broad ones. 11 is particularly broad. It says, provide some examples of contemporary issues that illustrate the debate over the scope of presidential powers. So you really have to kind of think critically about things we've talked about in class or things that have happened in the news over the past few years. I'll give you a couple of examples. This presidency that's coming to an end here, the presidency of Donald Trump, has been very controversial in some instances. As an example, the Trump administration imposed travel restrictions on people from certain countries, predominantly Muslim countries or countries with many Muslims in them, and people thought that was an overreach of executive power. President Trump has also basically, because he wasn't able to get Congress to approve of significant funds for a border wall, he's basically reallocated funds from the Department of Defense, and tried to use those via executive order. During the Obama administration, very controversial actions where he wasn't able to get comprehensive immigration reform through, and so he passed, or I should say wrote, executive orders that basically provided protections for children of immigrants who had maybe arrived illegally. This was the DACA program, and this was challenged. So presidents consistently, when they can't get congressional action, then they take matters into their own hands, and this can be very controversial. Now, slide 12, flashcard 12, the impact of modern technology and social media on the president's role. I mean, obviously, the president is going to try to communicate with people. They always have. They've always used the technology tools at their disposal, be it in the newspaper, be it radio, be it television, internet, and now social media. And we see that with President Trump. You know, the social media provides him with a ability to communicate in an unfiltered way, unfiltered through the media, unfiltered through the press, directly to voters. Some people think this is very democratic, and other people think this can be problematic. You know, it certainly allows for people to kind of, alongside presidential tweets and so on and so forth, they can promote misinformation on social media as well. But the president has become much closer to the people, I think you could argue, through social media. But I think there have been a lot of problems that have come along with that people have talked about. So that's kind of a big, broad concept, flashcard number 12. You know, it relates directly to flashcards 13 and 14. The bully pulpit is simply the idea that the president can communicate directly to the American people in ways that no other person in the United States in any position of power can do. When the president speaks, people listen, no matter what the forum. And in this case, you know, the social media is a big way to do it. If a president is popular, they can use the bully pulpit to convince and persuade people of Congress to support their legislation. If the president is unpopular, the bully pulpit is not nearly as effective, but it is a tool the president has that no other person has. One way in which they use the bully pulpit is the State of the Union address once a year. This is not required to be a speech, but it is constitutionally required that the president update Congress from time to time on the State of the Union. And it certainly is, in years past, has been an opportunity for presidents to take credit for accomplishments and to set an agenda. And they have for the year to come, and they have a captive nationwide audience. It's not just the people in the room in the House of Representatives chamber that the president is speaking to, but he's speaking to the American people, and usually millions of people tune into this. So this is a significant tool to use the bully pulpit. A couple other logistical items here. Constitutional requirements to be president. You have to be a natural-born citizen, and the age requirement is 35. You have to have lived in the United States for 14 years. And you know, these constitutional requirements are you know, pretty clearly laid out, just as there are requirements for the House and the Senate as well. And then the Electoral College, you know, I think we've talked about this at length a few times, so I'll just go quickly. You know, the idea that the president is chosen by electors, and the electors are awarded by state legislatures, and each state has the same number of electors as they have as members in Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate. So the states have elections, and then those states send their electoral votes to one candidate or the other in the Electoral College. We've talked about this already. So let's pause here, and we'll pick up with the remaining flashcards in the next video.